Welcome to Sleepover with Yuri. If you've ever been categorized as a minority, whether for being an immigrant or LGBTQ or a person of color, well, guess what? You are in a majority on my show. A Sleepover with Yuri is a show that promotes equality, celebrates diversity, raises awareness, and empowers all minorities. There's a lot of stigma, and their stigma is a problem for people with health conditions ranging from HIV to a variety of mental illnesses. But it is especially powerful in the context of substance use disorders. Even though medicine long ago reached the consensus that addiction is a complex brain disorder, those with addiction continue to be blamed for their condition. The public, as well as many people working in healthcare and in the justice system, continues to view addiction as a result of moral weakness and flawed character. Untreated drug and alcohol use contributes to tens of thousands of deaths every year. Drug addiction ruins health, relationships, disrupts lives. Today, I would like to discover why it occurs, how it occurs, and how to work towards recovery. Today, I would like to raise awareness. I would like for people to see drug addicts as those who are sick and suffering, and instead of blaming them or looking upon them or criticizing them, to show them love, support, and compassion, which I believe will make our society a better place for all of us. And today I have a special guest who is a dear friend of mine, and I'm gonna ask him many questions. And my guest is a drug addict and an alcoholic, and his name is Manny. Hi, Manny.
Hey, Yuri.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Manny, first of all, let me just say I'm very, very grateful that you agreed to come over tonight and talk about drug addiction so openly. I believe that we need to talk about openly, and it takes courage to admit that and be open about it. To me, you're a hero for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't tell you how much this is helping me talking about it, so it's just as much helpful for me. Hopefully it is to you and the viewers.
Thank you. So before we start, I have to ask, what is it that you're wearing? I'm in love with your PJ.
Oh, wow. This is from my friends at Boy Package. Hey, Sharif.
What's the Boy Package?
Boy Package is a line of intimate wear swimsuits and just club gear, geared to all boys.
Okay, so is it just a boy underwear kind of?
Yeah.
It looks very cute and
Thank
sexy.
you.
Very,
Thank you.
very promiscuous. And what is the little stuffed toy that you have with you?
This is Gertrude. This has been my childhood stuffed animal since I was maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4.
Really?
We've been to Puerto Rico and back.
Wow.
Many times.
Well, it looks like you're younger than me, like a decade. This is stuff toy that I slept with when I was a little kid, but it looks like could be a grandfather for your stuffed toy.
Yeah. Or that's the Russian Gertrude, and this is the Puerto Rican Gertrude.
I was a rough child, so this kid's been through a lot with me. But anyways, I like your cute little teddy bear.
Thank you.
Is that normally what you wear at night?
This is just for a sleepover with Yuri.
Okay, what do you normally wear?
I can't say my mom's watching.
Okay. All righty. All right, well, Manny, so tell me a little bit. I've known you for quite some time. I believe I met you about a couple of years ago. I never got to know you very well. Mm-hmm. However, what I do know about you, what makes you stand out, definitely, and what makes you admire you is that you are a drug addict in recovery. Mm-hmm. So you're someone who has gone through a battle of war with drugs and addiction and still fighting, but looking at you now, to me, you're nothing but, fresh air, ray of light. You're such a beautiful, positive person. It's hard for me to believe that you have a drug addiction.
Well, thank you. I want to say that moment by moment, I'm still a work in progress. Moment by moment, I am still working on being sober, which is my goal. And it has come from coming from a place of, not some not so great things happening in childhood, not so great things happening in adulthood, and that influencing the decisions that I made as an adult, how I coped with those issues. And for me in my journey, it was never developing a way to speak, express, to get it out of my system. It was just hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, and explode. Hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, drink, use, run and hide.
When you said that, so you said now you're sober. When was the last time that you used a drug or alcohol or anything?
On September 15th, 2020, it'll be 18 months of continuous sobriety. But I've been, going at it since August of 2018.
All right, so 18 months, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing.
Nothing, and it's my choice. I understand people have different definitions of what their sobriety is, what they allow, what they don't allow. For me, I know that I need to be away from all mind-altering substances.
Manny, if you don't mind me asking, what drug of choice did you have? What drugs you were addicted to?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the first one was alcohol. And I was a little bit different than a lot of kids I know and a lot of kids that I know in the program. I only tried drinking once in high school, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't until I moved back to New York City in 1997. I had a fake ID, and I was going to Splash Bar. I was hitting Christopher Street, and that's when New York gay scene was really happening. Somehow they let me in, and by socializing and knowing, that I was gay and experiencing my sexuality in such an environment that is so saturated and is just turned up 1,000%, that I think it would be very hard for anyone at the beginning of that journey to kind of ease their way into it. It was just jumping in. So I think that's why it may have taken off so quickly with alcohol. Then in my 20s, I was going out to the big clubs, Roxy, Limelight, Twilo, all of those, and I was introduced to the party drugs, the usual, ecstasy, ketamine. I would like to say, though, that for me, pot wasn't a gateway drug. That came in somewhere along the line, and I had a little bout with that as well. Mm-hmm. And to be really honest with you, later on in my career of addiction, sometimes in my 20s, a lot of my 30s, and then just before my 40s, crystal meth took over. Should I say it didn't take over? I formed a partnership with it, and it was a very unhealthy relationship.
So yeah. How long was the relationship with crystal meth?
It lasted a few years, but the really difficult part for when all I did essentially was use was 2016 to 2018.
When you said you used and you were in a relationship with crystal meth, was it a daily relationship? How often?
It started off like many stories that I've heard. It was very, very occasional. Now and then it became the weekends. Then the weekends became longer. Then the weekends were now the week long. And then it was thinking, if you think about a calendar and the 7 days, it was just a couple of hours of sleeping, a couple of hours of eating, a little bit of sleep, but a lot of all the bad stuff.
So you started off as dating, going on dates, and then you just moved in together, basically.
The U-Haul,
got married,
everything.
So many, it seems like there was a very tight relationship with crystal meth, which I know it's a very heavy drug. Mm-hmm. And congratulations on getting off that drug and becoming sober. What made you separate and break up with your partner, with crystal meth?
I love that you asked me that question. There came a moment where I really looked at myself. It was in between a run of using. And I said to myself, well, if you took all this time and effort into meeting these people, into being in these situations, into using, into essentially running my life, my relationships, my work relationships into the ground, what if I switched that around and I tried to live my wildest dreams? What would my career be? What would the relationships in my life be? What would my health be like? That's where it started.
So I'm just trying to understand here. So you were using drugs on a daily basis for years. Mm-hmm. So what happened, what clicked in your mind, your brains, that one day you decided that this is it for me?
Yuri, this might be the magical part. I don't know if it was my creator, my higher power spoke to me, or that may have just created that kind of space in my mind to look for a moment and say, all right, there's a fork in the road. Which way are you going to take it? I don't know if it was me taking an inventory of myself and looking at all the time essentially that I've wasted with drugs and with all of those different things that come with it. But I knew that I had an opportunity to change, and I went for it.
Back when you were an active user, did your friends or family, did they show you compassion? What was your experience, or was it more of people criticize you and didn't want to have anything to do with you? What was the attitude of people around you who knew that you had, problems with drugs?
I couldn't have been more lucky because I had my room to make my mistakes. Thankfully, it wasn't for me. It wasn't the mistake of stealing. It wasn't the mistake of breaking in, getting arrested, any of that. Thank goodness. So I had my wiggle room. However, there was a point coming where I understand there was going to be an intervention from my mother and one of my childhood best friends that I consider my sister. My grandparents, who are older, just suffered watching it happen from a distance. And the thing is, once I made the decision that I was curious enough about seeking out sobriety, I reached out to someone that I knew from hanging out, and he told me he was sober. He told me to come meet him at GMHC Thursday night, and that was for the agnostic meeting. And I went to my first 12-step meeting for CMA. And so the gentleman sitting next to my friend is the man that turned out to be my sponsor. And everyone I've met, because it's a team, it's not just my sponsor, it's not just my family, psychiatrist, my primary care doctor, my counselor at outpatient rehab. And now I have a counselor that's going to help me transition into studying for my career of choice. I have all of these people to help me. And at no point, even when I went to the hospital for mental illness, did I have any judgment? Did I have any hardships? But what I was taught is that if I want to get better, there are certain steps that I have to take. And I took the first one, which was stopping to use. Then I had to learn how to live like an adult. I had to learn how to take medication. I had to learn how, if I wanted to work, to be sure I was ready to be responsible. If I wanted to be a friend or a relative and have a relationship of any kind, to respect and be respected. So I've been lucky when it comes to receiving compassion, but I've also had to give compassion because a lot of people were on the receiving end of my mistakes, of my shortcomings, and of the decisions that I've made when I chose to be an active addiction.
Okay, well, again, one more time, and I'll probably keep saying this throughout the whole conversation. Congratulations on finding a way to sobriety and healthy life, and especially, separating yourself from crystal meth, which is such a heavy drug. You did mention that so many people helped you. And seems like all the people who you mentioned are people who work or are in this field of drug addiction counseling or whatever, which it took a village to help you. Like all these people were involved, but all these people, they are working on this. What about people who have nothing to do with drugs? People who, so now that you're sober, and I'm understanding you're open about being a drug addict in recovery, when you say that to people who have nothing to do with drugs, who don't work in drug-related industry, when you tell those people that you are a drug addict in recovery, what is people's reaction?
So here's the deal. I haven't stood on a soapbox and declared it to the planet, but it's wonderful because the people that I do come into contact with that are a friend of a friend, a colleague, or anyone that I have a substantial conversation with, the reaction is actually one of support, one of curiosity in a positive way, or they can relate. You'll be surprised that more people than not have either had some kind of problem with addiction, have questioned if they have a problem with addiction, family, friends, or have someone in their life that they care about that's suffering from addiction. It's quite common.
Yeah, I feel like here in New York City, and we're really lucky to be in the city because when I started the show, it was more for people outside the city. We're lucky because we have all of my friends basically are either immigrants or LGBTQ or people of color. It's like it doesn't surprise me if a person is from a different country. Whereas if you go to Midwest, some people never met people from outside the country or drug addicts or LGBTQ. So it's great that here in New York City you have such a wonderful experience, and to make sure that people with addiction have this experience in other states. That's why I want to do this and just ask questions and talk about this. So Manny, you mentioned that something that really stuck with me, the requirement for yourself to get better, the most important thing for you to get sober was to actually be willing.
Yeah.
You said, I had to want this. So with that all being said, so you wanted to get sober. That's the most important thing to get sober, correct?
For me, it's the most important thing. Again, I look back on my career in using and drinking, as we call it, and if it were an Olympic sport, I was a gold medalist. I went as far as I could. Thankfully, it didn't cost me my life. Thankfully, I didn't end up overdosing. I was on my way at the rate that I was using, but I didn't get to that because of the fact that I had that moment where I just said, you know what, let's see what's on the other side of the fence.
Do you have friends who overdosed or died from addiction?
I unfortunately have people that have been close to me that are out right now, that I've lost. But I also have tons of people that are my family. I also have people in the 12-step programs that I go to that thankfully, they're still in that struggle. Some days they're sober and they're great. Some days they're out, but they keep coming back. They keep trying. And I think that's the most important thing, is just keep trying, even if it takes 1,000 times over and over. Some people get it on the first try. It took me 2 tries, but for today I'm sober.
Well, let me take us back to my question, though. So my question was, is that the most important thing for an individual to get sober, get better, to be willing to get better? Because you're saying that you wanted to get sober. Your friends, they try to get sober. And I understand it's still a struggle. It's not necessarily just because you want it, you will get there. So does that mean that people who are out there and using, especially if someone's friends or family, for them to get better, do they need to want this? Like, how does it work? Like, if I have, let's say, if I have a friend who's using drugs or someone in the family and I want to help them, for me to help them get sober, what can I do? What can be done?
Well, let's talk about the individual real quick.
Okay.
So I would say one of the fundamental pieces right there is they've got to want it for themselves. As much as if they go through 12-step, as much as that is about meetings and the relationship with family and all of those other pieces, the individual, the addict, is number one. I felt that way when I came into the program. It had to be about me and me getting better, because until I was better, I couldn't fix anything else. I couldn't be there for anyone else. In terms of family and friends that want to be supportive, it's that expression, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can want the sobriety for somebody so much. You can be their biggest cheerleader. You can hold their hand and take them to a meeting. But until it comes into their mind, it comes into their heart and becomes part of their soul, to where they start to make the change and take the steps to live the change, chances are it's not going to hold.
So what does it take for a drug addict or an alcoholic to want to get sober? As it seems like this is the only way or only chance for them to even try to get sober. Because if I understand correctly, just because you want to get sober doesn't mean that you will necessarily will. It's still a struggle. You work with a team of people, with a whole village of people helping you get sober. But what about those who don't want to get sober? They're just using drugs and dying. What happens to them? How does that work?
I don't know. I can't answer that because I'm seeing such an array of different experiences for different people in my life that I see every day.
Well, Manny, if you had a chance, you can look right there. If you had a chance and a, and say a message to yourself a few years ago when you were actively using crystal meth without even wanting to get sober, if you had a chance to talk to yourself back then, or people who are using now, what would you say to help them to want to get sober?
I would say you're courageous. You can have anything you want. Quit drinking now. And you can start living your wildest dreams a lot sooner than you think.
Thank you. So, when you were, so let me just get to the bottom of people who are, thank you for giving this message to people. When you were out there and using many, before you decided to get sober, what was it like for you? Why were you using in the first place? Why did you keep using? Did it make you feel good, or why did you keep using?
This is a great question. There's so many layers to the question. I'll try to do this quickly and clearly. You know, in the beginning, becoming an adult, making adult friends, it was just being caught up in the atmosphere. You know, your favorite song, you're dressed well, you're with great people, you're looking at good-looking people. It's so easy. And here's the deal I want to tell you. If you were to give me a ginger ale right now, it's going to have the same effect on me as a cocktail would. I just get caught up in talking and having a good time, and it's just something to do. When it came to the party drugs, it was that atmosphere again. It was just so much sexuality and discovering myself. And that was what New York City was at the time. Weekend after weekend, as long as I got to work on Tuesday morning, it was okay. Because then Friday night, Saturday night was my time to do my thing. Then in my 20s and 30s, I had a long-term relationship that failed. I was starting to come to terms with childhood abuse, not with a professional, just kind of playing those tapes over in my head, realizing that financially I wasn't doing well. And this is also kind of, I think, part of what addiction is for people in general. It feels like dirt being shoveled on you more and more.
So it was a way to escape for you?
No, it was, I don't know how the heck I'm going to get out from under this pile of dirt. So let's try to have as much fun as we can. Let's try to forget the responsibility. Let's forget the fear.
A way to check out, a way to escape the reality in a way.
I never thought about it like that, though. I just thought, let's just see how much fun I could fit into one weekend. Yeah, absolutely.
So would you say that for you, being a drug addict and having a brain disorder, which, everything that feels good, you do it excessively, you can't find moderation? Is that what it is? You find something you like and you overdo it?
Well, when we talk about mood and when we talk about the illness portion of it, it's when things don't feel right. When I go into fight or flight mode, what I put up in its way, not necessarily to feel good, what I put in its way to fill a gap, what I put in its way to bring me back to a calm place. That's all of those things that we discussed.
All right, so for you, all right, so drugs for you also is, so I'm just trying to, so people understand better. So addiction is a brain disorder, and your mood is all over the place. So you either feel super happy or super sad or empty, and drugs help you or helped you in the past to control that or take you to the extreme that you were looking for?
You know, it's funny you should mention it because incidentally, it wasn't until I started going to see doctors when I decided to be sober to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder and the way that crystal meth affected me were the same. The high was the same, and then the come down depression was exactly the same. So for years, maybe even as early as childhood and adolescence, I could have been experiencing the mania and the depression and never knew it. So then adding on the drug, I wouldn't have seen a difference because that was already part of my life, was the highs and the lows, sometimes feeling like I can accomplish anything in the world and feeling great about life, seeing the world through, you know, I don't know, fairy tale sunglasses where everything is perfect. And then just a time later where I can barely get out of bed, where all I can do is sleep, where just going to the restroom or going to eat seems impossible. So thankfully, getting the helped me to see that chemically my body on its own was doing this, and then adding on the drugs was multiplying that. So yeah, I hope that helped.
It it definitely opened the door, and a lot. You know, it's a very happy conversation. I want to applaud and congratulate you on your sobriety, and thank you so much for being so open about it. I'm would love to talk more. I would love to ask more questions. However, we do need to go to bed and we do need to go to sleep. Unfortunately, yeah. But thank you so much. And everyone who's watching, I just want to remind, please be more compassionate and more loving and more supportive to such wonderful people like Manny. It doesn't matter if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic. Remember, it's a mental disease. And like Manny said, if you're using or drinking, please quit because you have so many dreams that are waiting for you. And if you have friends or family who are using or drinking, just be loving. These people are sick and suffering, but they're people, and they're very nice, like Manny. And hopefully they will hopefully they one day will realize that there's a better life. Well, thank you, Manny. I can't hug you because of the pandemic.
I'll send you a hug.
Yes, I'll send you a hug. Have a
Thanks
good
so
night,
much.
Manny.
You too.
Thank
Take care.
you. Good night.